Welcome back to Big Sky Buckets. I'm Big Sky, and today we're talking Hicks versus Knicks, the series preview of the second round in the East between the Knicks and the Pacers. A classic back in the day is going to come back in a very new way, shape, and form. We're going to talk about the two series that led up to this point, and then we're going to finish off the episode talking about the preview of this second round matchup. But before we begin, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. I'd appreciate all the subscriptions, likes, comments, etc., and support in general as I get this thing up and going, and let's jump into it. So Pacers versus Bucks. This series ended first, and let's just kind of jump into, we talk winners first, and then we talk the losers of the series, what went wrong, and what to look forward to with the offseason, what changes are on the horizon, if any at all. But Pacers, congratulations. For the first time in 10 years, you are moving on to the second round. That is pretty exciting. This one was a series of no defense, and the youth and the energy, the shot creation, and honestly the playmaking and just like the amount of assists for the Pacers really helped them just move on in general. I said in the predictions video, this was the Pacers series to lose due to the Giannis injury. Yes, they miss Giannis a lot because there was not really anyone to guard Pascal Siakam in that game too. And then for the rest of the series, they really had to guard him a lot harder, which opened up the floor for a bunch of other players, including Andrew Nembhard, Tyrese Halliburton. TJ McConnell had games, Obi Toppin had games, like Miles Turner had himself a game at one point. This has been the thing, just really quickly about Pascal Siakam. One of the biggest problems with the Raptors after their championship run when Kawhi left was the main thing is that Pascal Siakam is best when he is the guy getting to the rim and shooting mid-range shots and surrounded by shooters. Every Raptors fan will tell you that. It's just that Masai Ujiri for the Raptors just loves really athletic wings that can defend and have trouble shooting. It's like his kryptonite is he just can't resist drafting them. And I respect him because those are really, typically they turn into really great players, but the fit in today's modern NBA doesn't necessarily work as well. But getting back on track to the Pacers here, Halliburton, who didn't have a phenomenal series in terms of shooting or scoring, he still had a lot of gravity in terms of playmaking. And again, that opened up the floor for a lot of other guys. And the main thing here is just they really outscored, out-hustled at times, and that was kind of the series in totality. And it came down to that game three that went to overtime. That one was electric. And that kind of was the story of the game, is that even Chris Middleton, who has been a playoff riser for so long, despite injuries and how they have affected his game as of the past couple of years, he still rose to the occasion. But at the end of the day, it was the hustling, the offensive rebounds, and eventually just getting to the line, just attacking the rim led to the Pacers winning this series. Obviously, their three-point shooting, they're just offense and how fast it is for an older, slower team. This is what I expected to happen, especially when Giannis, basically we kind of knew he wasn't coming back in this series for the most part. There was always speculation, right? But I think a lot of us kind of knew, you don't want to rush this guy back because if he tears his Achilles, which a lot of people were comparing it to the Kevin Durant injury back in 2019, where they, after a month of not playing, they got him back in, and in the same, within 10 to 20 minutes of that game, he tore his Achilles. You don't want that for Giannis, who is all athleticism and, no jump shooting, jump shot creation, because the Achilles definitely affects more athletic type of players like Giannis, guys that attack the rim more so than just typical jump shooters like Kevin Durant, where you don't need to be drawing as much contact from shot to shot. Having said that, the Pacers definitely benefited from having Damian Lillard get injured at one point, but he tried to come back in that last game. It just didn't work out so well. It is what it is. And for the Bucks here, it's kind of like I described for all the pros for the Pacers here, is if neither team is really going to play any defense, you're going to go with the team that's just faster, has been doing it all year long, where they play with extreme pace. They create as many shots as humanly possible. They try not to take as many contested jump shots. They really try and create the best available shot. And that just ended up being kind of the kicker to the series. Like the games that Chris Middleton went off, like game 3, those were not open jump shots. Those were very highly contested jump shots. That's just, tip your hat to that level of shot creation. And for the Bucks here, it's just, they're just old and slow. They're just old and slow, and that's kind of what it boiled down to. I think they did a great job at times of really taking over the game and like swinging momentum, especially with the bench unit at times. But even, I think Bobby Portis probably would have been much more of a factor if he wasn't so inconsistent from game to game. You really didn't know what you're going to get from him. You had the one game where Pat Bev had a triple-double in game 5. To stave off elimination. That game was pretty damn great. But for the most part, they just had a little bit more energy. They had a little bit more juice. There's not a good enough explanation in my eyes as to why the Bucks couldn't hang with them. I just think everyone kind of understood that this team was not as athletic enough. There were people like Ajax coming off the bench for the Bucks, like these younger guys. But Doc doesn't like to play them. We talked about this ahead of time, like when they got Doc Rivers. He doesn't like to play the young guys, and that's the core issue is going into the offseason. The Bucks don't really have as much flexibility to change the roster as much. Yes, they're going to lose some guys. They got to keep some guys. I don't know how you can trade Chris Middleton because he's just not the same player. Brook Lopez, he can really only play drop at this point. But the main thing is the Bucks just need to get flyers, buy low on a bunch of younger guys that have shown flashes, and they need POA defense. I know it didn't really matter as much in this one, because Tyrese Halliburton wasn't hunting his shot as much, and that's perfectly fine. But to me, it's just perimeter defense, POA defense, and just youth. They just need a little bit more energy here, because if this is what the team looks like without Giannis, which I know, as an MVP candidate, perennial MVP candidate, obviously the team is not going to be as good, but these guys are older on the Bucks. They're going to get injured more. It's Brook, Chris, Giannis being the youngest, and he's 30, and Dame. That these guys are not young, and that's probably the predominant issue. So you need to get young guys that somehow Doc Rivers will play, and I don't know what you give up to acquire those, unless it's just hope for the best on a flyer on some guy that has not panned out on another team that does not get re-signed there. But we'll break that down more come the actual offseason when the playoffs are over. Without Giannis, he averaged 40 against the Pacers in the regular season. That's a lot of points. That is a lot of points. And they definitely missed that. It's not the end of the world. This is basically a microcosm of the Bucks year. Cursed. Just the vibes, not great. It just all was messy and muddled. And there's issues here that can be fixed. I just don't know if they will have the skill of pulling off the right trades, acquiring the right pieces to go to Milwaukee to entirely fix this. And it might just come down to trying to run it back with just minimal changes and hope that it works better with more consistency under their belt. And for the love of God, please, Doc Rivers or someone in that organization just needs to tell Dame and Giannis to run more pick and roll. That's all I got for that series. We're going to move on to the best series so far in this first round. And I don't think Mavericks Clippers, no matter if it goes to 7, or Orlando Cleveland, no matter if it goes to 7, they both play tonight. Both of those series could end. We do not know. The Knicks 76ers was in fact the best series of the first round in my opinion. A ton of credit to the Knicks. They look like a well-oiled machine. Quite literally everyone came to play at some point. A lot of people such as Shaq, a lot of former NBA players that go and be part of the media, they always talk about the others, the role players stepping up. And in this series, Isaiah Hartenstein, Mitchell Robinson, Dante DiVincenzo, Deuce McBride, Josh Hart, they all came to play. And of course, OG Anunoby, and of course, Jalen Brunson. And starting in game 3 all the way to 6, he was spectacular. He averaged 35.5 for the series. Incredible stuff. 3 40-point plus games in game 4, 5, and 6. He had 40 bombs, and multiple of those were with over 10 assists. He was phenomenal. He was spectacular. Right now, he looks like the best guard in the East, for sure. No question about it. They look like a very hard team to beat. They've learned from their mistakes a couple of times in this series. Take game 5, the end of game 5, and the end of game 6. It quite literally is you learned from your mistakes, and Tom Thibodeau made adjustments. In game 5, Tyrese Maxey, the 76ers are down 3, and the Knicks elect not to foul him and let him just take one of the last shots, and he drains the logo 3 to tie the game to send it to overtime. In game 6, they say, not this time. Not this time. It doesn't matter if it's Tyrese, doesn't matter if it's Buddy Hield who's been hot from 3. They said the second they get the ball in, we're up 3, we're just going to foul them and send them to the line and just keep this thing going until we inevitably win. And we just are banking on the fact that we're not going to miss free throws. And it worked. And you closed the series out. The Knicks, collectively, the depth, phenomenal. You can't ask Josh Hart to shoot better, I would say. He shot very well in this series. Dante DiVincenzo shot very well in this series. I would say OG is probably, he contributed a lot, but it wasn't as, I'd say impactful if you're going to rank all the players, but that just means that next series he's going to come to play for sure. And he still was great. Everyone here was great. Mitchell Robinson's defense on Embiid was phenomenal. Isaiah Hartenstein, the offensive rebounding of the Knicks determined this series. Honestly, because it'd be like the Knicks are down at halftime, and then the third quarter they start to come back, and then when Embiid is not on the floor, we're just going to beat the shit out of you and start coming back and taking a lead. And a lot of the games that swung the way of the Knicks was just because of offensive rebounding. You just got to give them a ton of credit. They look like one of the better teams in the playoffs left. I think they have a very good chance of going to the conference finals. And I mean, you can't, if you are talking finals for the Knicks, it's not out of the realm of possibilities here with how they played in this first round against what I called a wolf in sheep's clothing in the 76ers. That's just a great brand of basketball for the Knicks, and congratulations for moving on to the second round. For the 76ers here, there's a lot to talk about. We start with giving credit to Embiid. Now, if you're a Knicks fan, you don't have to if you don't want to. I understand. It was a controversial series. It made it entertaining. If you're not a Knicks or 76ers fan like me, it made it super entertaining just to watch these two fan bases truly, truly, truly hate each other. And they will remain hating each other for quite some time. This series will have a lasting impact on how the fan bases view each other, because this one was a downright dirty but super entertaining series overall. From someone on the outside looking in, you got to give Embiid a lot of credit for playing on one leg. That surgically repaired knee almost immediately in game 1 just went out the window. And he still played. And he played through Bell's palsy. And for all the criticism Embiid gets in the playoffs, this is the one where I can actively say, even if he played bad at times, just because, there's not enough lift in his shot, he's just tired because he's playing so many minutes. Because when he's on the floor, despite if he's playing bad, the 76ers are still a good team. But the on-off numbers and the eye test line up perfectly when he's off the floor. This 76ers team is absolutely awful. And for the national media people saying that this is Tyrese Maxey's team now, Embiid just won an MVP. I know he gets a lot of criticism. I understand it. He's not the greatest playoff riser of all time. But when Maxey's on the floor and Embiid is not, Maxey's not that super complimentary number 2. He's trying to play number 1, and the Knicks just hound him. And they did. But when Embiid, even if he sucked in the fourth, and there were a lot of games where he sucked in the fourth, it just draws so much gravity. It allows Maxey to be that brimming young star. And that's why he shined in game 5, is that the entire Knicks team was like, we're just not going to let Embiid beat us in this fourth quarter. So Tyrese Maxey did. It was so many, when you saw the triple-double from Embiid, It's because of how many DHOs and just passing it to Maxey over and over again because he's getting doubled. But I'm not. It's not to take away from Maxey's performance. He was phenomenal as well in this series up until this final game. It just didn't really swing his way. But he had heroics. He staved off elimination in Game 5, and he proved a lot of people right about this guy is a star in the making in terms of being a perfect complementary number 2 to Embiid. It kind of sucks that Buddy Hield didn't come to, he just finally got it going in the final game. Because, man, it would have been very helpful in Game 1, Game 2, Game 4. Big shout out to Kelly Oubre. He came to play. All right, let's get to some criticism here. Tobias Harris, I think all of the 76ers fans should be celebrating right now because he's that max contract that you gave him for some reason, that Elton Brand gave him, it's gone. You are free, Philly. You're free from him. And he was awful in that elimination game. He was 0 points. Just terrible. But there's a bright side to it all. That despite losing in the close games and needing to get more rebounds and just not being able to down these, because that's what the series comes down to. The 76ers were trying so hard to hold a lead or come back. It's the hustle plays that just killed them. Okay, in terms of the 76ers offseason, this is where it gets really interesting because of all the teams that we've talked about so far in terms of being eliminated. This is the team with the most flexibility. Daryl Morey has really stood his ground on the fact that he was not going to really help this team during the trade deadline. He only got Buddy Hield for basically nothing, and he got Kyle Lowry basically for free. Getting rid of James Harden and getting all of these role players on expiring deals has basically opened the path for 3 max contract slots. Obviously, the one going to Embiid. Obviously, the one that they're about to pay Tyrese Maxey. And then this third one. There's a lot of talk about Paul George or just basically any star player that is either not going to get re-signed because of the new CBA and the cap implications. This opens up the floor for a lot, but one of the first things that I would say is you also have about, I think it's 4 first-round picks to be able to be dealt with, but there's some guys that you definitely want to keep here. I would say that if you can get, whether it's Buddy Hield, but definitely Kelly Oubre on a preferable deal that's not going to mess with the max contract slots, because you took him on a flyer this year and he played surprisingly well for the majority of the year. It's just about which role players can you keep for cheap and who you can possibly lure to come play with Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid. And then there's not too much more to say until we do a deep dive on them this offseason. For the love of God, please get Joel Embiid another surgery, a full one this year. Just make it so that the team is acceptable with a second star next to Tyrese Maxey for a while, and let Embiid work his way through rehab and come back and not necessarily rush him back. I know he wasn't necessarily rushed, but the fact that in the first playoff game he got injured tells me everything I need to know that knee is definitely not good. He's probably going to need another surgery there. I'm no expert on that, but I would say so just from watching the games. Just get him back fully healthy, and then maybe this next time is the one. And, if you flame out a little early in the playoffs again, come next year when this team could possibly be the best it's ever been under Embiid, then you got to start asking questions about, does this work? Should we try a new, should we blow it up, whatever? But that's not here and now. There's a lot of flexibility for this 76ers team come this offseason. So there's a lot to look forward to. It's just in the moment right now, it probably hurts. But that's all I got for the 76ers. Let's move on to the Hicks versus Knicks preview. So this series, defense versus offense is what it comes down to. I mean, look, I will start off by saying, before I even break anything down, I'm going to probably pick the Knicks in this series. Not probably, I am going to pick the Knicks in this series. There's collectively more experience across the board here. I think OG probably matches up as well as anyone on Pascal. I think the one of the harder things, in my opinion, is probably like Isaiah Hartenstein and Mitchell Robinson having to play on the perimeter a lot more, given that how many rebounds they got in this last series really came down to the fact that Embiid wasn't necessarily around the perimeter as much as Miles Turner will be. He was definitely, especially during the games where his knees hurt a lot, but I think that is an important factor. But having said that, this Knicks defense is very, very good. And the Pacers defense is not. Jalen Brunson's going to get whatever the hell he wants. But I will throw in that despite how good the Knicks defense is, the Pacers offense is good enough to have games where they just outshoot everyone, right? Shooting variance definitely matters, and shooting luck will matter at least in one of these games. This is not, I don't think this will be a sweep. I do think there cannot be any lapses like in the previous series with the Pacers. Like game 5, there was a lot of lapses. Game 1 was just, we'll just chalk it up to young, inexperienced, just wasn't ready for the playoff intensity. But they've got a series under their belt. This is the one where I have to say that, like, Haliburton was good in the last series. He was good. He's not very good at defense. But I think he needs to shoot a little bit more in this one. The Knicks will want the others for the Pacers to shoot a lot more. They're going to do their best probably to stop Pascal Siakam from getting his. And the question is, can TJ McConnell, down the stretch of the series, that's when he started playing better. Can TJ McConnell play up to that level? Will Obi Toppin have some revenge games here? Yes, he's not, again, there's not really many great defenders on this Pacers team, but can they still play as good offense when the defense is significantly better than what they faced in the first round? That's the real question I have here. And yeah, the problem here is I think the Haliburton from pre-All-Star break, the one in November, December, January, that Haliburton, I need to see a little bit more of. Where you're shooting 40+% from 3, where that itself draws a lot of gravity. Because yes, the playmaking draws gravity itself, but the shot creation elevates that. And that's going to make it harder for the Knicks defense. If that does not happen in this series, I think the Knicks are going to start running away with it at some point, because if they kind of know that he's not going to be shooting as much, they're not going to be as worried about him shooting, which is kind of odd to say, but like the idea here is that they're more afraid of the guys that in the previous round shot way more, that impacted the game way more, like Pascal, like Miles Turner. And I think that means a lot here. I'm not going to write the Pacers off. This is not a sweep. I think the smallest amount of games will be 5, but I don't see 7-game series. I don't see it. I could be wrong. I've been wrong. I didn't have the Knicks moving on, and they did, but they look They look like a step above the Pacers right now, and that's okay for the Pacers. It's the first time in a while that you have been to the playoffs, and then you made it to the second round here. I think this team needs more defenders here to even it all out. And that's the thing about the playoffs is, like, if you have an average level of defense and your offense is really good, that can propel you to a deep playoff run. But I think with the lack of overall defense, POA defense, God, Brunson's going to eat in the series. And I guess maybe you just try and bank on the fact that, like, Josh Hart can't shoot as well as he did in the last series, or make, Isaiah Hartenstein and Mitchell Robinson try and beat you. But even then, I just don't think the defense is good enough to force the Knicks into that situation. So I think here it's just the depth of the Knicks in how. Oh, you know what? I'm so sorry. The last thing. One of the things that's definitely going to dictate this is in the Pacers-Bucks series, there were a lot of fouls being called. And in the 76ers-Knicks series, they let them play a lot of times. I'm really interested to see how the officiating goes. Now, that's across the board for most series, but this is one of the biggest discrepancies. Is like because of the way that the Pacers play with such pace and the Knicks play such brutal defense, like that's night and day. Based on how like the first couple of games are officiated, or like I'd say the first 3 games probably, just because you need to get an idea of how they're going to call it in the Garden versus how they're going to call it in Indiana. That could easily be as big of a factor. I think the Knicks probably get this one in 5 or 6. I just think that the defense that the Knicks play with and their offense has been pretty well, has done very well so far. It's just a more well-balanced team, and their star player is shooting at the level that seems to be very hard to stop right now in Brunson. So I think this is just a learning experience for the Pacers going into this one. If it does swing the Pacers' way, I think it's simply that playing with such pace, like we saw at the beginning, like the second quarter of Game 6 against the 76ers when they went small and just played with pace, that did bother the Knicks. But I think collectively the Knicks have done a good job of adapting through the series to specific issues. So I think they might struggle in like Game 1 or 2 against the quick pace of play. But eventually the defense will adapt to that. So that's why I think the Knicks are probably going to come out on top in this series in about 5 or 6 games. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, listening. Sub, like, comment, and I will see you guys probably like tomorrow. All of these first rounds are like wrapping up. So I'm going to be spamming a bunch of these videos. I'll see you guys tomorrow or Sunday. Peace.